Thomas, I want to begin with you. Do you see any other scenario here? If they've reached a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but are debating RICO, is it possible that they have found him not guilty of those other 4 charges?
It's great to be with you, Vinnie, and thank you for having me on. You know, again, having gone through the Roberts case, R. Kelly's case, and something very, very similar, there's an enormous amount of information. In Roberts' case, there were a lot of more counts, and there were 13 racketeering acts. So the fact that they were able to quickly figure out those the 2 through 5 demonstrates that they sort of they understand exactly, you know, where they want to go with those acts. But the main act, the racketeering act, it's, you know, I think it could be a timeline problem. Perhaps, you know, that they don't know if it was continuous. They don't know if this enterprise was designed for the purposes of facilitating criminal activity. So there may be some confusion there, and there may be some disagreement. If that's the case, then perhaps the question that you asked, the 2 through 5 counts could be guilty.
Could be guilty. Matthew Mangino, do you see any scenario where he could be not guilty of 2 through 5 and they're still debating RICO? Thomas, what is everyone doing tonight? And let's start with the defense. Like, what are they saying? What are they doing? How do you prepare for tomorrow? What are you thinking about?
Well, I can say this. In a case of this magnitude, with a high-profile client, you have to prepare your client for the worst. You have to try to get your client into the mindset that, you know what, things may not work out, but you have to maintain hope. And they're probably doing the same thing I'm doing, is going through the verdict sheet, trying to figure out where they were going with how they're going to, what their verdict will be. And if you look at one of the racketeering acts, they did want the definition of distribution, which is the last racketeering act under count 1. So, you know, however you want to read the tea leaves, they are grappling with it. And I think that, you know, at this point, you tell your client and you try to prepare for the worst, you hope for the best. You know, and I agree with the other commentator that this could be, you know, a mixed verdict in count 2, 3, 5 through 5. It doesn't mean that they have to find guilty in all or not guilty in all. It could be guilty on 1 or 2 of the counts and then not guilty on the others. So, you know, I think, though, as from the defense perspective, if they're grappling with racketeering and it ends up in a mistrial or they're deadlocked on racketeering, that's the worst of the worst. So the government will have to determine whether or not they want to recharge, but at least they're still deadlocked on that racketeering. And, you know, the other counts do carry heavy sentences, but the racketeering is what gets you the long time sentence.
Yeah, that's potential game over stuff. Matthew Mangino, so we could be talking about Matthew Mangino, Thomas Farinella, and Marissa George. All right, yeah, and Thomas Farinella, isn't this kind of the federal government being a little disingenuous when it comes to RICO and drug distribution? You're going to get a guy on RICO for giving his girlfriend drugs? Like, to me, that was never the purpose of this law. Like, and I'm a prosecutor, I get it, but I was a state prosecutor where, you know, a crime happens, we try to figure out who did it, and then we prosecute them rather than inventing new laws to try to sweep people up. Like, I get it going after Don Corleone, right, with RICO, but going after Diddy for giving Cassie or Jane drugs, he shouldn't be doing it. You can call it drug distribution, but you make it a predicate for RICO?
Well, Vinnie, listen, you know, I argued this in Robert's case. I said if the government is allowed to go down this path with Robert, they're going to be able to take legitimate businesses like being a you know, superstar musician and turn it into a RICO enterprise, and that's exactly what they did. And I agree with you, Vinnie. They are being disingenuous. And so with that being said, the government has all the advantage, right? They have the full resources of the government. They were able to successfully try a number of these type of racketeering RICO cases with sex trafficking and Mann Act over the last several years. Robert being very similar to Sean Combs, obviously, because they took this normal business, this enterprise and made it illegal, made it illegitimate. So it became that the musician's sole purpose was not to produce music and not to make money and to be successful, but to have this this enterprise with all these bad things, and it amounts to bad choices. These are bad choices. These are not good lifestyle choices. But to criminalize them, these are independent events. These are adults who are engaging in sexual relationships that are consenting. This is not RICO. This is not the racketeering or the gambling rackets where in 1970 when they passed it to stop the mob, which it successfully did. But this is nowhere near that. They're criminalizing legal behavior, and I agree with you. It's a huge government overreach, Vinnie.
Yeah. Marissa?
It's an unfortunate situation, and it's sad in and of itself. So, but, I found his testimony to be somewhat credible, to the extent that what Matthew just said doesn't hold up, and the jury actually credits it. I think they could side with him in this instance. It does remind me of the Daniel Penny case and what's not present. So here, that duty to retreat is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a listen. We have some more of the testimony. This is coming because not only is the defendant young, the victim is young as well in this absolutely senseless night of violence. Survived. Obviously, one did not. That's why it's one count of murder here. What do you see as justice in this case?
Well, listen, these are the types of cases that are hard, and this is the reason why people ask why I do criminal defense work. But, at the end of the day, you have to try to put your, no matter what the result, you have to try to put your client in the best position possible, and you're going to have to, in the event there's a guilty verdict, they're going to have to argue that he was 16 at the time, he's now 20, there's a lot of mitigation in between 16 and 20 to show that he was, he's now a law-abiding citizen. It was a terrible, terrible mistake. It was, and so they're going to have to make a compelling argument from that standpoint, which is going to be very difficult. And so I don't believe he had any witnesses testify on his behalf that demonstrated the self-defense. You have three victims who survived testifying. It's a lot. It's a heavy burden to overcome.
Absolutely. We have about 20 seconds left here. Matthew, what do you see as justice?